Hey Thomas, how are you?
Jonathan, I'm doing fantastic. Got a lot of stuff on the menu today. We got round 10, Trump versus Harris, logic versus emotion. All right.
Yep.
And we're starting to see, forget about mud being slung. We're seeing the rocks being thrown now at the glass houses. That's what we're starting to see. So getting a little exciting. Early this week, the great President Joe Biden made a beautiful comment. You want to pull this one up? There's some that have seen this or heard it from the different news. It's very interesting. Joe Biden takes aim at Donald Trump. We got to lock him up. And then he paused. And then about 7 seconds later, he said politically, he was talking
Yep.
to the Department of Education, teachers. I think it was in D.C. he was doing this. And everybody's like, yay, lock up Donald Trump. I mean, you know what? The mentality of people blows my mind. It really does blow my mind. Yes, during Trump's time, they would chant and lock up Hillary, but he didn't do it. He didn't say, hey, let's go forward and prosecuting her. He didn't do that. But, they basically been after him even before he took office in January of 17. They were putting the impeachment on him. They impeached him twice on two different things, et cetera. We know the history, and the justice system's been weaponized, but we're going to get more into that as this video goes. And yesterday, Trump was on Hewitt's show doing a podcast. If you can pull that one up,
Before we
it
jump to
said,
that, so before we jump to that, I don't
yeah,
know. So again, this is in response to that. Trump responded yesterday to Biden's, part about him lock him up,
okay.
and what I guess it was really everyone is all for one party, but I think when you separate everything, forget about both parties, for example, you can't do what the Democrats have been doing to Trump, right? They've weaponized the department to go after him in any possible way that they can, and it's worked to some degree, and it hasn't to some degree. But when you start doing that, then gloves are off. Everyone's just going to go after each other. You're not going to go after the right things. You're not going to support the country. So it's just troubling that you're right. Trump said years ago that he's going to lock Hillary up. Never happened. Now Harris, Biden, their whole thing the last 4 years is try to get Trump, get him, put him in jail, get him out of the circle, and I think it's so see through for most people. Not everyone, most people they see that what they're trying to do, and I think that's why it's actually helped Trump over the last few months that
It's
most people
it's
can see
it's
through this.
yeah, it's helped Trump. Jonathan, this is the thing. This is actually out of Karl Marx's book. What do you call it? Communist Manifesto. All right. They've weaponized the Justice Department. Trump is not a politician. He only got into politics when he became president. As he said, and he, states openly, he wrote checks to both Democrats and Republicans. Chuck Schumer, he used to give checks to when he used to come to him and, want money for donations to run back in the day. You cannot weaponize the Justice Department. And that's what the Democrats have done. And some Republicans are on board with that. That is not the U.S. constitutional justice. All right. And what Hillary actually did, she destroyed a server with over 31,000 emails. That's a destruction of justice. That's destroying evidence. And she knowingly did it. She had a server in a bathroom in Denver, okay, when she was Secretary of State. It was just, she was totally off key. She's a very manipulating person. We're going to get into her comments on what she made yesterday as well, too. But, you know, Trump said yesterday that he would fire special counsel Jack Smith within 2 seconds of taking office. And, not only would I fire Jack Smith, I would prosecute him. And that's what I would do. I'd prosecute him on domestic terrorism, and I'd prosecute also um, the one down in Georgia. I'd also prosecute Letitia James and Alan Bragg because this all came out of the White House. The guy who was one of the top prosecutors for the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland, he resigned and took a job in New York City under Alan Bragg to go after Donald Trump. These were the White House orders. I mean, this is basically a conspiracy that they all plan to do this with Trump and indict him, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what they were looking to do. These are domestic terrorists, and that's what they are. The FBI is part of the problem too. That's why you couldn't actually prosecute these people in the federal courts. It would have to be a military tribunal. And that's exactly what I would do, is make an example, because they're trying to hijack the justice system in this country and put their own people into positions of power. Your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
I mean, I think we've seen that, right? I mean, if everyone has been paying attention the last few years, you're seeing what's happening, and I mean, in they're asking Trump a question, and he's pretty much saying exactly what you said. The part that is concerning for us, should be everyone, is that exactly what you said. If you're in their eyes against them, you don't know what they're going to swing at you. They're going to come from all different angles to get you down. Luckily for Trump, he is a person of power and wealth, so he's been fighting back. But most of the little guys can't do that like him. So
Oh, listen, you know what? The United States Justice Department has an unlimited war chest. That's why they have over a 94% conviction rate, where people take plea deals. They won't even go in the courtroom, because they will just drain you of all your funds, and they'll even throw out trumped out charges at you, and you have to prove them wrong in court. And that again, that's manipulation, what they're doing. All right. But that's a whole nother segment. We get into that. Um, Harris this week had a town hall that was sponsored by CNN, and CNN host Anderson Cooper was pretty hard on her. So was Dana Bash, saying Kamala Harris failed to close the deal on policy during the town hall, meeting, and she's basically Miss Word Salad. I mean, she can't answer a question that's thrown at her. You can't answer yes or no. She just beats around the bush. Your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
most troubling thing, and I think a lot of the Democrats and the press and the media, they are criticizing it as well, is that you can't get any kind of answer out of her. I saw her, I don't know which one it was on. They asked a very specific question, and she responded back with, "I'm gonna do my research. I'm gonna do my homework. I'm a nerd. I like to do that before I
Mm-hmm.
answer questions." But we're what, 11 days now from the election, right? You need to have these answers out there. They're not easy questions, but you're running for president. You have to know your policies by now. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think she can answer them because she does not know her policies. She's hoping that they're going to be given to her, and then she's just going to push them. But um, that's the biggest thing. They focus so much on, hate Trump, as they're like, hate Trump. Trump's a dictator. He likes the Nazis, generals, all these other, uh, very flashy points, but they're not going after the problems that we have. Trump goes after immigration. He talks about the economy. He talks about inflation. He talks about things that are hurting the majority of America. And I think that's why people it's resonating with them, because they're feeling it and it makes sense to them. But people don't care. Like, one of these clips, I think it was with the next one with Anderson, they were talking about all the media is talking about is if Kamala is black or not. I mean, these aren't these aren't the things that we need to be focusing on. The most important
Exactly.
part about being a president or any person of political power is, are you qualified for the job? That's it. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
who you are, what you are, just be qualified.
Yeah. And there's a guy called Charlemagne the God. All right. He runs a podcast. He actually had Anderson Cooper on yesterday, and Anderson Cooper has blunt response after being criticized for CNN's Trump coverage by Charlemagne. Honestly, that's bullshit. I'm sorry, said the CNN anchor. And basically, Charlemagne was saying you guys should be having a round table discussing Trump's fascist views and everything else. Well, by the way, this guy calls himself Charlemagne the God. All right. Meanwhile, his real name is Leonard Larry McKeebley. He's out of Charleston, South Carolina. Shocked the shit out of me to know this guy got voted into the Radio Hall of Fame back in 2020. So I don't know what the criteria was for that, but this guy must have his own little alter ego going on. And it's amazing how people call Trump a fascist. He's a dictator. And like you mentioned, the Nazi comment. Um, you know, who's really the dictators here? There's a guy named Joseph Goebbels. He was actually the propaganda minister for Hitler. And, his thing was, you keep repeating something, people are going to believe it, believe it, believe it. And sure enough, that's what's happening here. People believing it. People don't verse themselves in the history of what's going on. We have actually, if you could pull up slide 6, I'm going to jump ahead of the one with Ohio Town, but not the next one, the one with the left puts a target on Donald Trump's back with the Nazi Adolf Hitler smears. I sent that one to you at 10:30. I don't know if you got that email.
Let me pull it up one sec.
All right. Anyway, basically you have Kamala using, the Nazi, calling Trump Adolf Hitler. You had Hillary Clinton making comments. They're having a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden. That's where the Nazis were. Let me give people an education real quick. In 1938, Time magazine, prominent magazine of the United States of America. Do you know who they made Man of the Year in 1938 with the award, Jonathan? Time magazine, without looking it up? Adolf Hitler. That's who he was Adolf Hitler. In February, I think it was February 20th of 1939, there was a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden by the German-American Bund, it was called. I don't know if people know or not, but the United States government, prior to getting into World War II, when Pearl Harbor happened with the Japanese, we were supporting Germany in the war, all right? There was a guy named Prescott Bush who ended up becoming U.S. Senator, who was the father to George Bush and also the grandfather to George H.W. Bush. He actually worked for his father-in-law, Hubert Walker. They had a bank on Broadway just around the corner from Wall Street. They were laundering money for the German barons and Nazis during World War II. Again, you know what? Who are really the fascists here? And that's what it comes down to. People got to understand history and know before they speak. And Charlemagne, he doesn't know history, and he needs to go verse himself. And that's the bottom line. They're throwing these things out, Nazis and Hitler, but meanwhile, they don't know the meaning because they're even being it themselves. They are being dictators, the Democratic Party. Your thoughts on all this, Jonathan?
I mean, the thing with Anderson Cooper is that I think Anderson Cooper in that interview, he even said that I've never said any of that kind of stuff about Harris and what she is, and then it was just kind of a back and forth. So, I mean, listen, we're not here to support CNN, but at the same time, fair is fair. I mean, if he didn't say that or any of his main anchors didn't say it, how are you gonna tell CNN or Anderson Cooper that they're all they're doing is talking about certain pieces that don't matter if it's one person that they have no control over. The whole thing is all it is these quick, flashy like titles so they can get you to read it. It's all nonsense. It's just to get your attention, like you said, just to believe it. The whole
Oh,
thing is they're trying to make everyone scared. They're trying to say that Trump
bingo,
is this, Trump
bingo.
is that. You
Yeah,
can't vote for him. This is the end of democracy. All of this, right? They're
yeah.
trying to scare you into voting for Harris. But when you really look at the facts, Trump actually has something that he's going for. He actually has, a policy plan that he wants. Now the details, right? We don't know the very fine details, but the bulk of what he's trying to do. Harris
Mhm.
has been, 10 steps behind everything. And when we first started this, 10 weeks ago, she had nothing on her website. Then slowly she's adding things to her website. In my
Exactly.
opinion, you're too far. It's too late. I mean, 11 days, 12 days before the election, everyone has to know where you stand. And day after day, she's going on all these like news hosts and all this, and she's not getting the point across. You know,
She turned down Joe Rogan yesterday to go on Joe Rogan's show, and meanwhile, Trump's going to be on Joe Rogan later on today, which is Friday, October 25th.
yep.
If we, staying along the lines with Harris and the Biden administration, let's look at that slide, that story from the New York Post on this tiny Ohio town. You can pull that one up. Tiny Ohio town sees population double with influx of 3,000 immigrants from African nation as mayor blames open border policy. They have more immigrants in this town, and it's a suburb of Cincinnati, than they actually have residents of the area. The population was 3,500 before they started getting the influx. You know, this is a problem. I saw it. I backpacked Europe. I used to go to Europe a lot when I was a kid. I backpacked Europe twice in the 90s, and I saw things changing. I saw the sovereignty of the nations changing because of the immigration. The EU wanted to do that purposely. They wanted to put an influx of third world refugees into Spain, into France, into Germany, into Austria, into Ireland, into, you know, England's already always had that because England was a colonialized empire. You know, that was their thing. But all these other countries, they just got like such an influx. Like Poland president, he's very outward, and Hungary's president's very outward. They're not allowing any of these immigrants to come in. But the European Union destroyed the sovereignty of the European nations. And now that's the exact same blueprint that's happening in this country, purposely being engineered by the majority of the Democrats. Okay. You know, Tim Walz is a communist. All right. He is a communist. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The guy is a pro-communist, been to China, you know, almost 30 times, I've heard. So your thoughts on this story, Jonathan?
And I guess the issue here is that it's a huge issue, but for most people, it's not their issue, right? So they don't care. But
Mhm.
think about that. If your town was overrun by, foreigners, and now you're a minority in your own town, it's very upsetting. So I don't know when people will wake up. I don't think people. It's going to be by the time people wake up, it's going to be too late. That it's already done. So that's why
Yeah.
this election is so important that whether you like Trump's personal, opinions or what he stands for, you really have to look at what he did the 4 years that he was there and what he's looking to do these next 4 years.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean that's just it. I mean we need to know where we're going, and with Harris, you have no idea. That's the
Yeah.
biggest problem. I mean, listen, if she came to the table and she actually had solutions for all the problems, and she even admitted things that they did that were wrong, or that maybe she changed her mind on things like the whole fracking thing. Like she said, like from I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago that she's against, and now she's for it. But she doesn't tell anyone what happened in between. So it's okay if you change your mind, right? I mean, but you have to go through it and explain what happened, what made you change. But we just get a bunch of like laughter, and it's not
Well,
funny.
that's her defense mechanism was the laughter, which she's going on. Um, Listen, her father is a college professor. He is an open communist. So if you grew up with that mindset of your father, you know, feeding you this, you know, chances are you're leaning that direction too. And, you know, America's got to understand the Constitution. There was an article in the New York Times at the end of August saying the Constitution it's a dangerous document to politics. And I'm going, holy cow, this is what's going on with the New York Times. And then, you know, I decided to look into who owns the New York Times, meaning the shareholders. It's BlackRock and Vanguard that own the majority of it. So they're dictating to, I think it's the Shilster family that has the paper itself. But you know, you got to look behind the scenes. Who's dictating? Who's engineering things? Because whoever controls the money controls the situation usually. Okay, so American people, like Johnson's saying, you got to really wake up now because when you do, if you don't wake up now, you're going to wake up when it's too late. You're going to go, holy shit, how did this happen? Okay, we're trying to, you know, give you some knowledge here, and I'm giving you facts. That's what I'm giving you. Let's go to the last article. People who are wrestling fans.
Yeah.
Ex-WWE star Mick Foley weighs in onto Trump. Absolutely nothing fun about this man. So basically, what Foley was saying, let's see. So, Donald Trump, are you going to put me in jail for criticizing the Supreme Court because I think Clarence Thomas is a disgrace? The Supreme Court fully said, I think Sam Alito is a horrible person who doesn't even belong at the highest court in the land. I don't even think Brett Kavanaugh. He said with Brett Kavanaugh and said he wouldn't even have landed a dishwasher job. Now, I guarantee you, without me speaking to Mick Foley, he's making these comments because of the Roe v. Wade changeover, because these people were part of it. All right. Again, if you know our Constitution, the power goes to the states. The states make the decisions. Mick Foley, Long Island guy, out from East Setauket. You know what? I think you took too many tacks to the brain there, Mick. You got to look at things realistically. And I think what you need to do is take a trip to Minnesota, go into one of the local elementary schools or junior highs, and go into the boys' room and grab yourself one of Tim Walt's tampons off the wall and shove it so far up the anal canal to absorb some of those dead brain cells that you have. All right, because you're really speaking in stupid tone. You got to know the Constitution, and that's what it comes down to. I'm making an example of Mick Foley here. That's exactly what I'm doing because I want people to realize, don't be calling Trump a fascist, a Nazi. You know, we do have enemies within this country. It's called the deep state. And that's one thing Trump did prove in 2017. There is a deep state. And the deep state didn't just pop up. It's been around about 50 years, and it spears off from the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, which ended up becoming the CIA. So these are the issues we have in this country. This country isn't being, run, by the people for the people. It's being run to control the people. You look at how many liberties we've lost over the last 20 years between 9/11 and COVID-19. Look at how many liberties and freedoms we've lost as Americans. When are people going to wake up and go, holy shit, what's this bullshit game that's going on? You look at the Patriot Act. Patriot Act was actually authored in 1996, but got to put into effect in 2002 because they used 9/11 as an excuse to happen. There's a lot of question marks about 9/11. I'm not going to get into it because it's a very emotional type of subject for a lot of people. But for the United States to let 19 camelback jockeys from Saudi Arabia come in here and do what they did when we have the greatest defense in the world, that's what's got to make you think, where did things go wrong? All right. Anyway, Jonathan, I'll let you have some closing remarks here because I've been talking a lot.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, right? That's the beauty of America. The problem that we have is that everyone has different platforms, right? Celebrities, pop stars, all of them, they have these huge platforms that they can influence a lot of people. And a lot of the times they may not even know, like we just saw right now, they may not even know the real facts. They're just going off of what they want to believe, and these make-believe assumptions that they have, and then they're using their platform to influence other people to feel the same way. And I think that's the biggest part that is problematic with what we have and what we see right now. And that's a lot of the times it comes from all people, right? It could even come from the candidates themselves, like we're seeing, or the current administration right now. And that's the part that has to change. We need a real fact-checking piece that's implied in everything. Right now, we have like a bunch of people just saying whatever they want to say because they believe that that's going to change people's feelings on certain issues or certain people. I don't know why that's allowed, and I don't know what the real way could be to fix it, but something in the long run's got to be changed. I know like what X did, what I like is that um, if someone posts something that is not true, it actually has like the below it has like this is not true. This is actually from what So we need more things like that that really put things into perspective because people on the air, people on the radio, people on their podcast, they're just talking. It doesn't mean that it's true. And oftentimes people just believe whatever they hear.
You know what? You're 100% correct. I think what you just stated is a good way to end this podcast. So we did round 10, logic versus emotion. We're getting closer to the election. Listen, I voted yesterday here in South Carolina. There's been a lot of people. I had to wait about 40 minutes to vote, but it was an interesting process. I did cast my vote for Trump and J.D. Vance. So I am very proud to say that because I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in America. And my prayers that he does get into office, stays alive, and actually is able to do what he did over the last 4-year period, but also be more constitutional. That's what I want you to be, Trump. And you know what? Don't be a spender. Let's cut that budget and get that deficit down. Thumbs up. Hit that like and subscribe, and please share. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Take care.